You're
Okay, we've started the recording. Well, thank you guys for joining us. My name is Mitch. I am the current president for Soccer Athletic Training Society. We are honored today to have Katie Walsh Flanagan with us, just chatting with us for a little town hall meeting. So we're hoping that more people will join us, but we do have a couple questions prepared to kickstart things off. So I think Matt has the first question. So Matt, go ahead.
all right. So, how did the opportunity for working in professional soccer come about for you? And can you share a fun or interesting story from those experiences?
Oh my golly darn. How much time do you have? Um, so here's how it came about. I played field hockey in college, and I walked on and got a scholarship. And our team at Oregon State University had gone to playoffs the year before. So shocking that I even got on. I didn't play soccer. We didn't have soccer in California where I grew up, not for the women or girls. We certainly didn't have it in college. So I didn't learn anything about soccer till I moved to Chicago after my grad school at Illinois State. And I ended up not being taught how to play, but I played on a men's league because there were no women's leagues. So I was playing a lot. We played indoor and outdoor and all sorts of things. And a gentleman, a German gentleman by the name of Karl-Heinz Gdanitza, approached me once because he saw me taping ankles of my teammates before the game. And he said that they were going to, he was the captain and the owner of a new indoor team in Chicago. And he asked if I would be interested in being their athletic trainer. And I was impressed that somebody from Germany would know what an athletic trainer was. Prior to that, I traveled a lot with US soccer, traveled all over the world with the men's and women's teams. So I'm used to people calling me a physio. But when Carl asked me, I was on crutches because I had broken the head of my femur playing soccer. And this is a note for everyone listening. Pay attention, because I said to him at the time in my youth, I said, I can't be an athletic trainer for you because I'm on crutches and it'll be another 6 months and I'll have to crutch onto the court or the field or the ice or what have you. And he looked at me and he said something in German that was translated, I speak German a little bit, to silly woman. He said, "We're hiring you for your brain, not for how fast you walk." And I thought, wow. So for the next 3 years, I was with our men's professional indoor soccer team in Chicago. We traveled in our league. I was the girl. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I probably, because it was long ago enough, one of the first females in all of professional sports, period. And there's so many fun memories. We got the one that I put in the NATA news was that at one point in time, we left Chicago for a 5-game road trip all over. And we kept having to send players home because they needed surgery. And it's a rough sport indoor. So we got to a point where we had 2 games left and the guys are warming up and the referee came to me and said, "Katie, you need to tell coach that you guys can't start the game." And I said, "Well, why can't we start the game?" He said, "Well, you have to have whatever the number was, players dressed that are on contract and you're 1 short." So I signed a contract to play men's professional soccer for 2 games. And it was hilarious. And things that you working with soccer would understand. I have probably 30 pairs of Samba in every color you can imagine. I have Puma, Nike, and Adidas clothing that you would be jealous of. I wear a size 5 men's shoe. The reason that's important is I can't tell you how many times a player would run off the turf for indoor, where you switch, like ice hockey, and be yelling, "Left, left, left." And what he meant was his left shoe, for some reason, had blown out. And he was my size. So I would take off my left shoe and give it to him. The only other one I'll tell you, and there's hundreds, but our goalkeeper had a 5th metatarsal fracture. And I made a orthopedic orthoplast splint to put inside his shoe just to get him through, because as you know, goalkeepers need to move, but they don't need to run as much. And we had a pretty tight team. but I couldn't do it in the shoe. I think it was Puma because the shoe wasn't configured right. So we took a Nike shoe and I X-Acto knife cut it, and we drew a little Puma guy, and we did all the things we're supposed to do on the outside of the shoe so he could play. But he got hurt at the end of the game. And the next day in the Chicago newspaper, it shows him laying on his side, and I'm taking care of him. But the bottom of one shoe said Puma, which you're supposed to wear, and the bottom of the other shoe said something else. So we got fined. So many stories between U.S. soccer and the professional team I was with in Chicago. It was just a great group of guys. I got to tell you, I enjoyed that time of my life.
That's a really awesome explanation. In your time with U.S. Soccer, what was your favorite place that you traveled?
You know, I've got a happy gene, and people have said I'm a little Tigger-ish because I always try to find the bright in anything. So wherever I am is awesome. Okay, I learned some great languages and some great things, but I just appreciated traveling, so it didn't really matter. I do think Germany was fun for me. I was with the women's national team, and a long time ago, the captains, who was Julie Foudy and Mia Hamm at the time, had to wear professional clothing, and they didn't have any. And I was their size. They still am. So I'm taking off my loafers and my blazer and my khakis, and we're switching clothes on the bus just so they could look right. But you know how it is, guys. We've rolled into a game late one night, and we were on a bus, and we were late, and we're trying to get somewhere, and I'm taping ankles on the bus and with the men's team. And you forget that the lights are on inside the bus while you're taping, and everyone's dropping trow and changing. And I mean, it's no big deal to me, but people are honking horns, and we couldn't figure out why they were honking. Well, they had to get the right colored socks on, but they were flashing everybody. So there's some fun stories about, and you guys know, just being an athletic trainer is pretty much the best gig in the world.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Those are really awesome responses. Thank you very much.
I could tell stories for days about those years. They were, and I could tell them about now. I work with men's football now, American football. So so it's different, but yeah.
All right. Well, I think Kelly's got the next question for you. That was pretty awesome. All right, Kelly, go ahead.
So we were wondering how your time working with professional soccer and with the U.S. Soccer Federation impacted you professionally and personally, and if you had any significant takeaways that still guide you today.
You know, so many. I think all of us, and I had the pleasure of meeting the majority of you before we started. Every experience you have makes you a better human being and makes you a better clinician. So let me talk about a human being first. And this doesn't have to do with US soccer or with pro soccer. It has to do with club soccer. So when I moved from Chicago out to California, I played club soccer, and there was no place for women, right? There was just a men's league. So they allowed me to play on the men's league. And the guys I played with were, you know, Mario and Ali and Akbar and Muhammad. And I was the white, I was the woman, I was the Anglo. And it was great fun, but we would always high five and after every goal. And it was just a great period of time. What makes me sad looking back is probably 3 years into it, I'm high fiving Muhammad, and he stopped and backed up. And I've played with him 60 games a year for 3 years. And he said, "Pardon me, Miss Katie, it's impermissible for me to touch an unmarried woman." And I was single at the time. And so I realized that in my enthusiasm, you know, I was a defender for just high-fiving, that I was disrespecting him. And I felt shame, but the first thing out of my mouth was, "Thank you for telling me." And so I didn't think a lot about cultural diversity as I was going through my life. I grew up in California and Hawaii, but you can always learn. And I don't know if he was trying to give me subliminal cues running from me, but I learned that, and that to me was powerful. So learning from US soccer, we would take boxes of Honey Nut Cheerios with us wherever we went, because a lot of times we were guests of a foreign government and they would provide us food that was incongruent with the food the men or women wanted to eat. And, but we were always respectful of them. They would bring us Sprudelwasser, which is bubbled water. So club soda. And they would bring it out in half-liter bottles and leave it on the grass. And you're playing in the summer. So at halftime, you're supposed to drink this very hot soda water, bubble water. And the American athletes, you know, you learn pretty quickly the ones that were very snotty about it and the ones that just shook it and drank it anyway. Just the cultural differences. I think it makes you, even if you don't leave the country, if you truly work with soccer and the different nationalities and people that are in that, you learn. With the professional team, you know, you learn so much. And here's a soccer, this is very soccer oriented. I traveled with both the men's and women's national team, but at one point with the national team, we had the same goalkeeper coach, Tony DeChico, who was amazing. And he told me the main difference between female athletes and male athletes is that in the locker room at halftime, if you told the entire group of male athletes, you have to get to the ball, you've got to step up, you've got to defend better, they all nod and they're thinking, you on either side of me need to step up, need to get to the ball, and they just nod. If you say that exact same thing to a locker room full of women, they're thinking, I have to get to the ball, I have to do this. And it's profoundly different. And if you don't work with both genders quickly enough in succession, you don't see it. So again, it taught me that you're not supposed to treat genders differently, but sometimes their wiring is such. Things like it doesn't matter if you walk in the athletic training room and you see two of your male players, snuggling together on the treatment table. It doesn't mean they're gay. They're just tired and it's okay. It's a zero judgment zone. Just a lot of really interesting relationships. And when I speak of this, I speak to you all as athletic trainers. If you've truly been an athletic trainer, which is I am, and I have for 4 decades, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's some stories that you all have that if you go home or try to tell your friends that aren't athletic trainers, they're like, that's gross, or that's weird, or how could you possibly tell me that and I would think it was funny. And in your head, just thinking about it makes you just crack up because you're like, really? And so I keep thinking we should write a book, but nobody would buy it except athletic trainers. And you all have that one guy or girl that no matter what, you know, their limb fell off and like a cataclysmic, and they bring it to you and you're like, it's a blister. I'll end with this one story. We had an athlete from Poland, and I'll call him Bushak, and in indoor soccer. And so an athlete missed him by about this much and just ran by. And so the defender that ran by, you know, I guess the force of the wind was such that my Bushak flew into the air and seized and landed and did the whole thing. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm on the bench and I'm waiting, and the referee blows the whistle and I'm waiting. And he comes over and says, you have to go out. I said, he's fine. He said, if you don't go out, your team will be fined. Fine. So I walk out there and I stood over him. I didn't touch him. Bujak, get up. And then I walked off the field and I asked the ref, does that count? He said, yes. Because you know you're athletes. And you watch the game differently from anyone else. You're looking this way when everyone else is looking this way, because you know. So I don't think that's any different from being an athletic trainer in any other sport, except for the theatrics of soccer a little bit. Did I answer your question, Kelly?
Absolutely. That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Sure. I'm old. I have stories.
That was great. There's so much of that I can relate to. You know, working.
Right?
Yeah.
Just because you're an athletic trainer.
Yeah. You know. But you know, in terms of this is just as a follow up.
Yeah.
You know, working in professional soccer with all the cultural diversity that's in that group. You know, it's been like eye opening of you know, just how different cultures are and how people perceive you know, well, pain differently for one, but also like, you know, how they respond to treatments. You know, sometimes
Oh,
they've
yes.
never like, you know, received rehab for their hamstring. You know, they grew up in South America. When they injured their hamstring, they rested for 3 weeks until they started feeling better, and then they played again. Like that was it. So kind of having that type of you know, different experiences or different perspectives from, you know, based on where those players grew up. That was
And if I can dive in, I'll tell you that it is cultural, but it's also religious. I had a player, Enrique, bless. In the South, we say bless, and it sort of means, what are you thinking? But we say bless because it sounds lovely, right? It's so cute. Bless your heart. So Enrique, a couple of times would freak out that the Virgin Mary statue that was in his locker with the wax candles on either side, and I'm talking, you know, cue, what was that baseball movie? Anyway.
Major League 2, maybe.
Was it Major League? Yeah, it was one of those where literally there is there's two candles, votives, and there's a Virgin Mary in his locker. And he thought he was having a bad game because the candle blew out. And he's like, you've got to go light the candle. And I'm thinking, you know, in my athletic training textbook, lighting the candle to stop an injury, I got nothing. But to him, he was almost catatonic that you've got to. And in indoor, you know, the soccer locker room is like attached to the bench. So what harm can it be, right? So I went and lit the candle and told him I lit the candle. And all of a sudden it was better. But for him, and again, as an athletic trainer, you treat your patient. And so you can't poo-poo what is their cultural and religious beliefs, even though if it's something like way wackadoodle from what you do, you need to honor and respect your patient. And that's just who I am. So I lit the candle.
That's another great story. This is good. We're diving right in. I do have the next question for you. And this is something that I've kind of communicated to you early on when I reached out to you initially. So, you know, SATS members, you know, Soccer Athletic Training Society, we represent soccer athletes at all levels, not just in the secondary schools, not only in the collegiate level. You know, we don't necessarily fall into any one of the committee categories set up by the NATA, you know, so like the intercollegiate, you know, committee, the secondary, you know, schools committee, the YPC, you know, maybe the, you know, COPA is the best, you know, kind of, I don't know, but none of that really fits exactly into what we're after. So I guess my question, sorry for the long-winded intro there, but you know, what do SATS members need to do collectively as an organization and individually as, you know, athletic trainers to help forge a stronger relationship for our organization with NATA, and when what we represent doesn't entirely fit into any of the committee categories?
Well, first of all, I cannot tell you how much it warms my heart, and I love that in a good way, that you don't feel you fit in, because it means you're blazing a bright path somewhere. And it's our choice as the NATA to allow you to continue on that path and make it brighter for you. So under my watch, I believe in something pretty firmly, and it comes from my background. I have 7 brothers and sisters. And the reason that's important is because my 2 parents sired all of us. And they're vastly different. I mean, my brother that's 11 months older than me, since I'll have time, I'll share this. He got his PhD in population mathematical genetics. I mean, what is that? But he got it at the age of 22. And so my family is like wickedly different. And then I have a sister who's a free spirit and would throw daisies behind her the whole time, and that's what she does. But we're family. And so it doesn't matter what they do. To me, if you're an athletic trainer, you earned a degree, you earned a national certification, you fought for the regulation in the state where you practice, and you have that. We're all in the same family. So at the end, if you practice at Frito-Lay and your job is taking care of the people there at Boeing Airlines, or you're with the NFL, or you're with Major League Soccer, or you're whatever, you're part of that same family because your genesis is the same. And I've been saying that for a long time. So under my watch, would I be president? I would say, you know what, let's have a discussion with your president, Mitch. And you gather information from your constituents, and you're like, where do you think you fit? And what makes sense? And I can tell you from my lens, going on my 4th year in the board, on all the different makeups. I'm a liaison to 6 committees on the board of directors sits. They have a board of director on every committee. And so I can find out more about different committees, or if it's an offshoot of another one. So maybe something like, the smaller sports societies have your own space, but why can't we facilitate that and help that with you? So I think that's a discussion we need to have, because it goes back to the fact, it doesn't matter. You all here, people listening, you earned a degree. You're board certified. You're regulated, except California, my home state. We'll get there. And so we all have that, every single one of us, to call ourselves an athletic trainer. And so there should be no fragmentation. And I'm entirely, I'll use the word pissy about treating people differently because on the lens they might look or act or be different, be it work in a different place or work in a smaller place or whatever. If you go back on my social media, and they're all public as far back as you can, I have been inclusive from day one, because that's who I am. And it means not just with ethnicity and gender and identification, but it means where you work. You should not be excluded because of the job that you chose that makes you happy. And I will do anything on my watch to make sure that you are seen and that you have a voice. And none of you know me very well yet, so you don't know this about me, but I don't do promises. I'm not going to tell you I'm going to create better salaries and work life. I will empower you to do that. But there are some things, when I say I can do this for you, I mean it with every fiber of my being, because it's who I am. You have to go back and look at my social media and the kinds of things I've put 10 years ago. I didn't just start this. And so, yeah, I would love, if you are interested in having a voice, I would love to find where that voice should be. And I would love to empower you guys to make sure that you feel that you are heard and that you matter.
Okay, well, thanks. Yeah, we're trying to create some original content right now, as you've seen. And we're trying to see if, getting more people engaged, getting more of our membership engaged, if that's going to help, kind of in a way, just kind of like wave our hands in front of NATA and be like, hey, how can we get a little bit more involved? How can we collaborate on some projects? Like one of the things that I'm thinking about is, youth soccer is a huge population that's underserved in terms of athletic training services. Well, how can we partner with the NATA to try to help, improve,
right,
healthcare to that population? I'm just trying to figure out, what are the steps that we need to take as an organization, to kind of meet you guys, meet NATA halfway, so that it's not necessarily like, hey, why aren't you doing this for us? It's
right.
collaboration rather than, hey, give us what we want. So.
Well, I'll share something with you quick. There were 4 of us that were in the running for president, and we had to answer the same 3 questions. And then from that pool in January, they chose 2, Kathy and myself. And it's like, what do you think are the biggest things impacting athletic training? What are your goals, and why do you want to be an athletic trainer? And we answered those, and actually the answers to those were actually in the February NATA news. And the reason I tell you is one of the things that I want to do is make sure more high schools, middle schools, and club sports and youth organizing bodies, which would be U.S. Soccer, have access to an athletic trainer. Or why aren't we talking to them? I'm an expert witness in trials about lightning deaths, and I can't tell you the number of people that they just had no idea about lightning, and that's my area of research. And you're playing soccer, and you're playing football, and you're outdoors, and if you had an athletic trainer, it would be a non-issue. So back in January, I was talking, that's what I would like to see. And you know, the nitty gritty of how we get there, there's a lot of parts and pieces, but the first is recognizing, you know, I see who you are. And then you coming and saying, we want to be participatory. We want to know how we can be more active and be more seen and be visible and have some resources. And then we go from there.
Thank you, Katie.
Sure.
Let's move on to the next question. I think Jess, you got the next one?
Yep. So Katie, I was just wondering if you could explain to us a little bit about your journey, kind of from working in the field to where you are today, becoming one of our candidates for NATA president.
Absolutely. It's not what you think. I was not raised with a golden anything. I grew up in California. I went to Oregon State, played field hockey, broke the head of my radius one of the first days of preseason. And they told me the athletic trainer could fix it. I also broke some ribs. It was a bike accident. And I thought it was the coolest thing that you could do that. So I switched majors and moved right along, went to Illinois State, got my master's, worked there for a while, et cetera. And then I decided to move back to California, which is where my entire family is. And I was at Fresno State. My third year there, I was beginning a new contract that was 3 years. And at the end of the year, I was told that my contract was going to have to end because the state had run out of money and I was the last one hired. And it was devastating, period. I can't imagine people now being laid off because of COVID, but I have been laid off and through no fault of my own. And so for that, I appreciate what they're going through. I won't say I understand it because I don't want to be disrespectful. But at the time, I thought, how can I never have this feeling again? Wow, those people that are professors, they have tenure. If they get tenure, they can't get fired, and that would be cool. So I have no money. So how do I get a doctorate? The University of Southern California, which is a very private, expensive school, had a doctoral program that was a forgiveness program. So if I could prove I was a minority, I mean, seriously, right? And that I was needed, they would waive my my fees. So I did some research. There were 50 programs in the country back then. None were headed by women, and none of the women in those programs had doctorates. Boom, I'm a minority. Who knew an Irish woman could be a minority, but I was. So I got my doctorate paid for. I came out to East Carolina from there, and I've been here for 25 years since then. And when I was at Illinois State, I volunteered in GLADA. I was stuffing bags and doing all sorts of cool things. When I was in California with Fresno State, I helped out at the state and anything they needed. I just loved volunteering. So it made sense in North Carolina. I got involved with licensure. Then I got involved with the state as a vice president. They didn't have women people in their officers, so I was a rogue. But they thought I wasn't too bad for a girl, so that was nice. Then the district had an opening to run their educational program. And I just kept stepping up. At the national level, I got to be involved in some education committees. And then I was fortunate enough to be elected as the board of directors for District 3. And what I love about all this is, you know, I still wrote my textbooks like I'm supposed to, and I still love teaching my students like I love. But the reason I chose East Carolina, they would let me No other place would, but they would let me still practice athletic training. So except for the years I was with pro soccer, I've worked 40 years of preseason football every day. And then during the season, I work a day. And then during the season, I work their home games and any other thing that comes up during the year with tournaments and that sort of thing. I feel personally that you need a leader who knows what it's like to stand out there when it's raining sideways and you need to pee. That where you've run out of granola bars and there's a lightning delay. That you get off the bus and you wait and the coach is watching films and then everyone's supposed to shoot free throws at whatever time in the morning. That you need a leader who knows what that's like. I have athletic trainers at the high schools. I get what it's like to give a kid a piece of 12-inch tape, athletic tape, so they can cut it in half, so they can tape the bottom of their rubber cleats to the leather top so it doesn't flap, because that's the only pair they have. So I'm real that way. And I really would look forward as a human being to have a leader I could talk to and have a president who would really understand what I'm going through. And Kathy's a businesswoman, and that's fantastic. I don't know what to do about business, but you know what? I know people who do. But the rest of the athletic training, yeah, I get it. But I also get how hard it is to get tenure. Because I thought you just get your degree and you get tenure. Yeah, no. It's like 7 to 10 years of pretty much bullying and hard work, and it's tough. So I want to be real and honest with people, and I want to tell them, no, you don't all need a doctorate of athletic training. You don't. You're good enough. But you know what? If you want it for you, for the trajectory that you're going, then you go you. And so I think all the experiences I've had in my life, good, bad, or indifferent, have really contributed to making me who I am now. I'm an administrator. I'm a faculty member. A lot of the policies and procedures and evidence you are using now, I contributed to. So I get it. And I want to be your president. So that's another thing. So if I'm lucky enough, yay. But if not, I'll still work preseason. I'll still write those books. I'll still find something to keep me busy.
Okay. Anyone have any follow-ups to that?
She fell off. Chatty.
Okay. I think Wafa's got the next question for you. Go ahead, Wafa.
All right. So I think this one kind of piggybacks off the last one, because you kind of talked about it a little bit. But what are some of your philosophies or methods regarding leadership you'd like to bring into effect as a president?
Well, again, I'm from a big family, right? So I've learned long ago that everybody matters, and you'll see some hashtags of mine are "You matter," because you as a human being, as an individual, matter, and I don't want anyone to ever feel that they don't. Okay, and the second one is rise up, because I do feel we can all rise up to their levels. But I think the kind of leadership I have is participatory. I have no problem protecting my patient ever. I want to protect our profession, and I want your opinion on it, but I'm still going to do the best thing for it. I'm pretty good about surrounding myself with smart people that are very different from me, and choosing people that can make tough decisions. I'll stand my ground, and I'll give you an example of one. I was called out recently by one of my members who said that this individual had heard from another member that I'm not an ally to the LGBTQ community, which absolutely stopped me in my tracks and stunned me. And I said, well, I am, and I'll talk about that later, but thank you, individual, for being brave enough to listen to people you respect and still reaching out to me and wanting to know how I truly am. And it stemmed from when the LGBT work group was formed in a particular February. In September, they came to the board and asked to be a committee. So I have a responsibility for the members' money. They were told to do 4 things as a work group, and they hadn't done any of them. So I'd called the chair before the meeting and said, look, I want you to be a committee, but you're not ready. you've got to do these 4 things. And on the call, I said the same thing. I want you to be a committee, but you're not ready. And so I'm going to vote no, which was horrifically unpopular. And here 3 years later is sort of coming back. But I will stand and do what I think is right for people's money, for all of the members together. Now, we ended up, lots of people, it was a split vote, sort of, but it passed. So you know what? They're a phenomenal committee, and they've done amazing things. But I'm not going to tell people, I'm not going to deny that I voted against them or why. But once we as a board decide to do something, I'm all in. And so as a leader, I will stand up and say, yeah, I know this is a subject that people just don't want to touch and don't want to say no to and don't want to be looking like they have biases, but I'm going to do the right thing for the membership. And the funny thing, in a twisted sort of way, is I have family that are members of the LGBTQ community. So for me to have someone say something negative about that community, to me, is affecting the blood that runs through my veins. But that is not a thing that God and country needs to know. I'm going to do the right thing even when it's hard. I'm a participatory leader. I'm a very active leader. And yes, I listen, of course, but I've been listening to you guys for years and years, and I'm ready to continue listening and doing something about it. So that's the kind of leadership style I have and how I plan to use my past to move into the future.
Great answer. Anyone have any follow-ups to that? Otherwise,
we had one follow-up to that from the group. Touching on what you just spoke on, can you discuss the NATA's role now and moving forward for social movements like Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ plus communities?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, and I sort of want to use the acronym that I think a lot of people were blind, but now they are beginning to see. Because I do think there's a significant number of probably whites in particular that think all lives matter, but they didn't understand that there's particular movements and moments where you have to recognize that there are populations that have been persecuted and microaggressions for a long, long time. The LGBTQ community committee is phenomenal. They are engaged, they are loud, they are strong. It is Pride Month, people. It is Pride Month. And if that makes someone feel uncomfortable, what I would like that individual to do is go through safe space training. And under my watch, and I've already said this, I've asked the board, we're talking about any member of the NATA that joins a national committee, we're going to ask that individual, I want to ask that individual to go through safe space training so you get a tiny bit of awareness of what it is that the LGBTQ community is facing on a daily basis. I also am a huge advocate for EDAC, the Ethnic Diversity Advisory Committee, and I was a representative on the board for a short time, and I was so sad when they moved me, but it's not my place as a board member to fight a move when a president moves you to a different committee. There's also cultural training. So the call we had last night was called Cultural Competency, and in one of my answers, I brought up the issue that I have a challenge with competency, because to me, it's like taping an ankle. So if you're competent, you can just check it off and you're done. I think we all need cultural humility training, where we're never, any of us, with just our lenses that we were raised, we're never going to be as good as we should be with all the different cultures. But we need to keep striving to be humility and learning and inquisitive and forward thinking. And like I've said before, you can go back 10 years in my social media, and probably every 4th or 5th post, it has people in there that are different from me. Why? Because I love them and they're amazing. When the George Floyd murder happened, I reached out to many of my Black friends and I said, how are you? And they're like, fine. And I, no, how are you? And then they talked for an hour and it was good. I am a member of the AT's Care I'm a liaison, but I'm also trained at the beginning level. And we had an extraordinarily powerful session about bringing anyone who has challenges with the emotional outfall, with all the horrific biases and racism that is being exhibited over hundreds of years of time, if they wanted to come and speak and be heard. And it was extraordinarily powerful. We are doing it again in the fall. And I don't care what your skin color is, in the sense that you will gain something from going to that. So I am extraordinarily inclusive, inquisitive, participatory, and I would expect and demand that my board and the people that represent the NATA shore up as best they can, get educated as best they can, keep learning, and be inclusive. And that's about all I can say.
That was great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Eric, for that question.
Eric, thank you.
We had some questions sent to us previous to the meeting, I think, right, Matt? So I know you had some collected. If you don't mind asking the next one out of those questions, that'd be great. Thanks.
So next one, who has had a large influence on you as an athletic trainer throughout your career?
I would say Paul Schechter. And I would say Marge Aubam. And you don't know either, you may know Marge, but Paul Schechter, probably when he was alive, was 5'2" on a good day, and nothing fazed him. He was the head athletic trainer at Fresno State. And here's what I mean. He, at the time, smoked cigarettes. Okay, so he was outside the athletic training room, which had an outside door, because you're in California, you're just outside. But once you got inside the athletic training room, it wasn't a straight shot. There was locker rooms, and there was football, and it was quite the maze. Well, he's out there smoking, and a man ran in and was looking terrified and zigzagging through the tables, and he's just watching. And then probably 15 seconds later, another man ran behind, and this man had a gun. And he's running in, and Paul, just with a cigarette, maybe someone ought to call 911. I mean, just so chill. And, you know, we're all in the athletic training room, and no matter what catastrophe happened on the field or administratively, he just took it all in stride. And Marge Aubam was our president and is now a member of our district. She was District 4 at the time. I've known her as long as I've been an athletic trainer. Always, always classy. Nothing fazed her. It was just, we'll take care of it. Don't you worry. And those kind of people inspire me. So those are two I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's 40 more that'll get phone calls that, why didn't you name me? But those are the two that matter the most.
That was great. Thank you. I think this next one really applies to probably many of us that work in the collegiate setting, but are also included in an athletic training program. How can we keep the clinical and educational aspects of athletic training more engaged with each other? Sometimes it seems as though there's a divide between the two.
Sometimes. You slay. Okay. I don't know. I'm at a research institution, which means, you know, we have to put out books. So it's unheard of for people at research institutions to leave the sacred halls of the library. And our athletic training room's on the ground floor. And up until 2 years ago, I was on the second floor. So I'm in the athletic training room every day. So they have no choice, right? It's like, the new standards of the CATI that are coming out next month, they suggest that the athletic training program director and that the clinical coordinator be clinically contemporary. They have to have contemporary clinical experience. And so you're going to get, and I'm not trying to shame anyone. Okay, so please let me paraphrase that. But you're going to get, you know, the goofy professor who teaches whatever, and coming down and standing there looking like a little awkward, like, hi, I haven't been in this place in 20 years or ever. And because we want people to know what it's like. You know, all the stories that I tell you, I wouldn't know them if I weren't an athletic trainer. So that helps. What will help, it would be so nice if the academic side would actually engage and talk with the clinical side. I go to my high schools during preseason. I go to 3 a day in between the football, ECU football. And I just, hey, what's up? What's going on? What's the challenge? Water's not working. Oh, I see the fireflies are out tonight. Pain in the butt. But just so you sort of get to know them and interact. And I don't know how you can force that. I think those of you that are athletic trainers that are practicing, I think really great things you can do is come up with scenarios, just goofy things, and see if oh, hey, I hurt here and this is what happened and here's my backstory. And then stop talking and see if your student can figure it out. Start engaging them more. What are you learning in class today? Okay, well, let me tell you how it's really done, you know, because that's often how, a lot of times academicians want to talk about the best new thing that came out, and practitioners want to talk about, but this is how it really works, right? And so, yes, there has to be a meeting. I don't know that I can mandate that. I could lead by example. I get a lot of people saying, we don't really understand how you can be a professor and a program director and actually call yourself an athletic trainer. Like, well, it's easy. It's part of my world and I make it that way. So I can suggest it a lot, but I don't know that I can mandate it. A lot of it comes back to you, the practicing athletic trainer, and to trying to engage the students more, because you don't want the students to mess up, right?
So Katie, just a little bit of a follow-up to that. And I will say I felt it a little bit more at the University of Virginia, which was also a research institution. Do you have any advice? We'd have students come in and they're learning best practices and everything else. And it's trying to teach them kind of like, hey, like I get that's the best practice, but try that with 30 kids that you see in 2 hours and let me know how it goes, without stepping on obviously the professor's toes.
Right.
And putting that, can you talk a little bit about ways to manage that, or, you know, solutions you have found that worked? Because obviously I love having students and teaching them, but at the same time, you know, I will say that I have gotten the feeling at times that the professor that taught them has not had 15 kids acting
right
for 8 million things in the 5 minutes before they have to go out to practice.
Yeah, one of my colleagues on the board is a high school athletic trainer, and they're talking all about the social distancing all through the schools with the 6 feet and every other seat. And he's like, I have 20 minutes between the last bell and first practice, and I have 50 kids that are going to, and they're like, how is that possible? So a couple things, the flip side of that. Okay, so I believe in using the kestrel heat instrument, especially here in the South. It's phenomenal. But you would have thought that I'm trying to teach our clinical staff, there's 19 of them, that I'm going to melt their brains. So what I did was I got the newest staff member who didn't quite know what to do about me yet. Like, am I scary? Am I? And I gave him our lab kestrel that's not Bluetooth. And I gave him the instructions. And I said, hey, the kids are practicing on this. I want you to have this, but I want you to help them pretend like you don't know, which they don't, and see what you can learn. So for me to teach, and like we don't do VOMs at the high school or at the college, but we do it at the high school. So for me, the opposite works. What I would say for you with when the students come with these great ideas, what you can say to them, not that first day, but at some point say, you know, let's try that. And you are sort of setting them up to fail, which is an absolutely safe place to do it. And so everybody wants a low-dye tape job or whatever. And you're like, well, why don't you try that? And then you sort of look at your watch and you go about being an athletic trainer, doing what you're doing. And then when they finish, however long of a time you give them to do what the professor said, then when you go out to the field or the court or the track, you're like, how'd that work out for you? And that way you're not shaming anyone. But if you do it the day they tell you, it's a little overwhelming. So if you just remember, and then you say, give them an opportunity to try, what the professor says, where they can do it next to you but not with you, and you can manage your thing. You're sort of letting them figure it out themselves that, yeah, that's not going to work. Now, is there a scenario that you could give me that would make it more specific, or is that, because sometimes that wouldn't help. I'm giving you a broad scenario.
No, that's perfect. It's just, I think I have felt like at times, you know, the best practices and the things that you get from the professor side, they just aren't feasible. Like in very specific circumstances, absolutely. But, you know, in the mayhem, they're just not as feasible as other.
Well, is there another question waiting? Because I'll give you a great example of that, but I don't want to throw another question under the bus.
Keep it going.
Here's a great example. KSI, Corey Stringer Institute, talks about having every athlete have his or her, or his, it's football, I'll say his. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I'm going to just go with the male pronoun for now. Every football player has his own water bottle. Well, that's ducky, but I said you need to, there's 3,500 athletic training students that just graduated that missed a whole half of a semester. So you're going to have to give them some guidance and, like put a water container in the locker room so they fill up there before they go to the field. And the professors were like, well, why can't you fill it up on the field? I'm like, well, you're at a high school and you're the only AT. So all those 10-gallon coolers are going to be empty if 100 people fill their water bottles. We'll just go get more water. On what? We don't have a gator. And even if we did, even with a student aid, I've seen too many, you send them off to go get water and they run into their crush and they're like, hi. And, they're gone for half an hour. And they're like, well, that wouldn't happen. I'm like, and then at wherever place I've worked, we've called our linemen the fat boys. And it's an affectionate term. It's not a negative term. But I won't know now if one of my fat boys sitting on the ground during a water break is because he's drinking slowly, or is it because his water's hot because he brought a milk jug and that's all he had and it's hot and he's not drinking? Or is it because he's just too tired to go 40 yards to where the water is, wait in line to get the water filled and come back? And the researchers are like, well, that's stupid. They can all bring their own little water jug, like a 3-gallon jug from home. I'm like, are you high? I mean, like, what kids have their own, like, and so that's me asking the questions back to the professors, because they don't include people like you in their decision making. It sounds fantastic when you're at this level, but when it comes to like treating your patients, yeah. So that's a thing where you can go and if depending upon the relationship you have, ask your students. Use your students, ask them the questions. Okay, well, what are you going to do about this? Well, what about this happens? Well, what about if you run out of water? And then let them problem solve and they'll figure it out. I would use the students, because that way you're not challenging anybody.
I appreciate that. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
All right. Looks like we are at last 5 minutes. Let's go. Do we have one more, Matt, from the group?
Yeah, we have one more, unless anyone else wants to chime in.
Yeah, anyone that's
right now.
Yeah. Okay, let's do one last one. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're like getting completely cut off at the hour mark. So Katie, you can always just finish your thought, and then we'll kind of break at the end. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So you talked a little bit earlier about kind of your direction of what led you to becoming a director. But what was the initial thing that led you into getting into, well, not only staying in the clinical side still, but getting more into that educational role? You've mentioned that you've held that dual role a little bit, but now you're
Right.
a little bit more in the office per se. But what really kind of triggered that drive?
Well, my contract calls me the director of sports medicine, and by my contract, I'm supposed to publish 2 peer-reviewed articles a year in a certain level of tier, very high level tier things. I've written 3 books in 5 years, and those don't count for scholarship. So you have to publish, you have to research, you have to do all that. But for my sanity, I mean, education is my job, and everyone I work with in athletic training, all they do is teach and advise and work with students and research. But I don't follow the drum very well. And my work-life balance, just as a sidebar, is phenomenal because 40 feet outside my office is a 55,000 seat football stadium. So at lunchtime, I go walk stadiums. And I get home at a decent hour, except for preseason, and have dinner with my fab husband. And when we take a break, we take a break. So education is what pays the bills. But I don't personally, and I really don't want to say this to make other people think that they're not doing it right, because just do your job. But I couldn't do my job as a program director in my ethical realm without having a pulse on what's going on. And we, from my office, I can walk to each of our 12 sports on campus within about 3 minutes because we're that close. We're on that side of campus. And there's a lot of faculty that you have to get on a bus to go where the faculty are compared to athletics. So it's really unfair. I'm extraordinarily fortunate. For me, from my career, as long as I'm welcome in the athletic training room, I would keep doing that. But I also feel it is my obligation to contribute to the body of knowledge. I've got 300 some students that I've graduated since I got there 25 years ago. And yeah, we'll keep graduating them. So it didn't really answer your question. I think I went a roundabout way because to me, a little complex and different, and that's okay.
Oh, I thought that was great. It's a really interesting dynamic how everything's worked out.
Yeah.
It's still pretty cool that you are doing what you're doing still. While
I love what I'm doing. Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions of me? I mean, I seriously, and Mitch has got my email. I am pretty reachable.
I think at this point, I think everyone has your email, Katie.
Fantastic. I'm pretty good about answering it. Now, I will tell you, I'm taking time with my husband on the 1st of July for those first 7 days. We're going to the mountains, and I don't even know if my cell phone will work. So if you write me then, you'll get an out of office. Okay.
Turn it off.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta be able to disconnect sometimes, and especially.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about our personal life in terms of we do fun things. We go hang gliding, and we've ridden donkeys in Santorini, and I've ridden motorcycles in a country where I can't even. It's hieroglyphics. It's not even letters, and I'm holding the map upside down. So we try to keep doing really fun and different things. Whitewater rafting. So it makes life interesting.
That's awesome. Okay. Anyone else? Last question, maybe? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I thought this was awesome. No connectivity issues like with some other meetings that we've had. So that's great. Katie, thank you so much for your time.
I just want to say how much I truly appreciate you, because you guys could have done happy hour. Maybe you are. You could have done anything you want for this moment, and you chose to hang out with me. And for that, I'm extraordinarily grateful. I will ask that you please read up on both candidates. And I will ask another thing. When you vote, will you please tell God and country to go vote? We want as many certified athletic trainers as we can. We, in the past, have only had about 20%. Kind of want to rock the vote this year. So let's make a real strong presence. So that would make me very grateful.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for those closing thoughts. That's great. Yeah, good luck with the upcoming election. Yeah, well, this was fun. This was a lot of fun. So
you guys know how to get up with me, except for that 1 week. So.
Yep. Well, you enjoy that.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.